October 4th. 1955 Yankee Stadium, 62,000 people. Game 7 of the World Series, walking to the mound for Brooklyn, a pitcher who had lost more games than he had won that season. No one believed in Johnny Podres. The city of Brooklyn had no reason to. But he stood on that mound, said nothing, and simply began to throw. What happened next did not just win a baseball game, it freed an entire city from decades of heartbreak. John Joseph Podres was born on September 30th, 1932. The oldest of 5 children in a family of Lithuanian and Polish descent, he learned to compete on dirt fields and in county leagues. At Mineville High School in 1949, he pitched a full 17 innings to win a championship by a single run. By 1951, Podres was pitching professionally for the Hazard Bombers in the Mountain States League. His manager worked patiently on his curveball. The results were extraordinary: 21 wins, 3 losses, and 228 strikeouts, the most in the entire league. The Cleveland Indians offered $250,000 to acquire him. The Brooklyn Dodgers said no. Chuck Dressen, their manager, had already made his assessment. He is the best-looking pitching prospect I have seen in years. In 1953, at the age of 20, Johnny Podres walked into Ebbets Field as a Brooklyn Dodger. He was young, brash, and confident in a way that only someone with nothing to lose can be. That first season, he went 9 wins and 4 losses, impressive enough that the organization knew they had something real. The team won the National League pennant that year, they went to the World Series, and they lost. Again. To the Yankees. Podres started Game 5 of that series and did not survive the early innings. He watched Mickey Mantle destroy a relief pitcher who had come in to replace him. He returned in 1954 and went 11-7. Solid, dependable, not spectacular. The Dodgers had far bigger names: Duke Snider, Roy Campanella, Jackie Robinson, Pee Wee Reese. Podres was a piece of the machine, not the headline. That was fine. He was learning. He was growing. 1955. Podres had a perfectly ordinary regular season. 9 wins, 10 losses. He allowed more base runners than anyone wanted. His earned run average was not impressive. By the time October arrived, he was not the obvious choice for anything. He was not the ace. He was not even close to the top of the conversation. Manager Walter Alston looked at his pitching staff and made a decision that confused many people. He handed the ball to Podres for Game 3 of the World Series. The Dodgers were already down 2-0. The Yankees had won the first 2 contests at their own stadium and were looking every bit the dynasty they had been for a generation. Teammate Clem Labine said quietly what others were thinking: "What I worried about was Mantle. Mantle liked hitting against left-handed pitchers." It was a legitimate concern. Mantle was the most feared hitter in the game. A left-handed pitcher throwing to a power hitter who crushed left-handed pitching, that combination could end a season before it truly began. The Dodgers needed a miracle. What they had instead was a 22-year-old from the mountains who simply refused to show anyone that he was afraid. Whether he actually was afraid, only he ever knew. There was one more thing no one mentioned publicly. Podres had faced these Yankees before. He had lost to them in the World Series 2 years earlier. In the autumn of 1953, on the very same date he was now being asked to pitch, October 4th. The calendar had come full circle. And this time, he intended for the story to end differently. September 30th, 1955. Game 3 of the World Series in Ebbets Field, Brooklyn. The Dodgers had lost the first 2 games. The mood was desperate. And then the stadium organist, Gladys Gooding, began to play Happy Birthday. The crowd understood immediately. The man taking the mound that afternoon was turning 23 years old. The boy who had listened to Dodger games through a bedroom radio in the mountains was now being asked to save a season on his birthday. 34,000 voices sang together before he threw a single pitch. He responded the only way he knew how. 9 complete innings, 8-3. It remains the only complete game pitched by any player in postseason history on their own birthday. Brooklyn was alive. October 4th in Yankee Stadium. Padres faced Tommy Byrne, who had already beaten Brooklyn in this series and gone 16-5 during the regular season. The odds still favored New York. Padres was calm. The Dodgers scored a run in the 4th inning and another in the 6th. Padres protected that lead with quiet precision. Then the bottom of the 6th arrived and the Yankees stirred. Billy Martin walked. Gil McDougald bunted his way on. Runners on first and second, nobody out. Yogi Berra stepped to the plate, batting 417 for the series, one of the most dangerous hitters alive. Manager Walter Alston later admitted he already had his hand near the telephone. Podres recalled what happened. I had Berra with 2 strikes. I threw a fastball that was 9-10 inches outside, not even close to a strike. A little pop fly to left, but it was a slice. The ball hooked sharply toward the foul line. It looked certain to fall. 2 runs, Yankees in front. Left fielder Sandy Amoros was playing toward center field. He ran. Being left-handed, his glove hand extended naturally toward the foul line in a way no right-handed fielder could replicate. At the last moment, at the edge of the warning track, he caught the ball with one hand. He wheeled immediately and threw to Pee Wee Reese, who relayed to Gil Hodges, doubling off McDougald at first base. Double play, threat finished. Gil McDougald said simply, "If Amoros had not caught the ball, I would have scored from first base." Padres finished 9 innings. Brooklyn 2, New York nothing. 7 World Series losses, and then finally, this. Buzzy Bavasi said what no one could say better. There was more celebrating in Brooklyn that day than for the end of the Second World War. 3,000 people lined the streets of Witherby to welcome the miner's son home. For winning Game 7, Padres received the very first World Series Most Valuable. The prize from Sport Magazine was not a trophy, it was a red 2-seater Corvette. He drove it home. He was 23 years old, the most celebrated young pitcher in America, and the cover of Sports Illustrated named him Sportsman of the Year. 3 days after Christmas, the letter came. The United States Navy had classified him as eligible for military service. The city of Brooklyn went quiet. The Dodgers front office responded with an unusual act of loyalty. They gave Padres a 20% salary increase, despite knowing he would almost certainly miss the entire upcoming season. Some things, they understood, mattered more than rosters. Padres spent 1956 as a sailor. He never stopped pitching. He threw for the Bainbridge Naval Station team and for the Glenview Air Station team, keeping his arm warm in whatever uniform the Navy issued him. Then, in October, the Navy released him early, citing a spinal condition that made further service inadvisable. He came back leaner, stronger, and, as his closest friends put it, in the best physical condition of his life. The cruelty of timing was not lost on anyone. While Padres was away in 1956, the Dodgers returned to the World Series. They played the Yankees again, and they lost again. The last time Brooklyn and New York would ever meet in October, and Padres was not there to pitch. He returned for 1957, the final season the Dodgers would ever play in Brooklyn. And he was magnificent. 12 wins, 9 losses. But the numbers that mattered were the efficiency numbers. 2.66 earned run average, the best in the entire National League. 6 shutouts, the most in all of Major League Baseball. His walks plus hits per inning figure was the finest in the National League. He had gone away to serve his country and come back better than ever. The Dodgers prepared to follow their owner, Walter O'Malley, across the country to Los Angeles. A new city, a new stadium, a new chapter. Podres packed his bags, said goodbye to Brooklyn, and boarded a plane west. He did not know yet that the hardest years were still ahead. Los Angeles was good to Podres for a time. He won 14 games in 1959, helped the Dodgers to a World Series championship, and went 18-5 in 1961. The best winning percentage of any pitcher in the National League that season. He started the All-Star game for the National League in 1962. He was not a forgotten man. He was still very much alive on the mound and in the rotation. But 2 things were happening that he could not control. The first was the emergence of Koufax and Don Drysdale, 2 pitchers of a different order entirely. Koufax in particular became something beyond ordinary greatness, a force of nature on the mound who left the rest of the staff standing in shadow simply by showing up to the ballpark. Podres, who had carried this organization to its only Brooklyn championship, was now quietly repositioned as the 3rd starter, the reliable veteran, the man you needed but did not celebrate. The second thing was his elbow. In 1964, during a routine batting practice session, Podres felt something wrong in his left arm. He described the sensation in plain terms to a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. "When I grip a baseball and try to throw, it feels like 100 hot needles jabbing my elbow." The Dodgers team physician traced the injury to a childhood wound that had been aggravated over years of professional use. Podres himself disagreed. He said this was like nothing he had ever experienced before. He underwent surgery, he rested, he tried to come back too soon, the elbow swelled again. The season was lost. The pay cuts followed. Management reduced his salary significantly for 1965. He started only 22 games and went 7-6. The next spring, before the 1966 season had barely begun, the Dodgers traded him to the Detroit Tigers. His time in a Dodger uniform, the uniform he had dreamed of wearing as a boy with his radio, was finished. He was 33 years old. He chose Detroit because his old manager from Brooklyn, Chuck Dressen, was running the Tigers, and he trusted Dressen completely. Before the season ended, Dressen passed away. Podres was left in yet another city, with a diminishing arm, among strangers. He finished with the San Diego Padres in 1969 at the age of 36, going 5 wins and 6 losses. When the final game ended, he did not announce anything. He just stopped. The lights had gone out quietly, the way they often do for men who never learned to make noise about themselves. And then, in the years that followed, came the drinking years he would later acknowledge openly and without excuses, the way only honest men do. He became a pitching coach, not briefly, not as a hobby. For 23 years with the San Diego Padres, the Boston Red Sox, the Minnesota Twins, and the Philadelphia Phillies, he worked without computers, without databases, without the kind of analytical tools that modern coaching now relies upon. When asked about the computerized charts that had begun to appear in dugouts, he was characteristically direct. "I do not know anything about computers." He knew pitchers. That was enough. In Minnesota in the early 1980s, he took a young pitcher named Frank Viola and taught him how to throw a changeup with consistency and conviction. Viola later described it as the pitch that transformed him from a thrower into a pitcher. In 1988, Frank Viola won the Cy Young Award, the highest individual honor in pitching. But the story that defined his coaching life happened in Philadelphia. In 1992, the Phillies acquired a 25-year-old right-handed pitcher who had already been passed over by 4 organizations. He had a reputation for not taking the game seriously. His name was Curt Schilling. When Schilling arrived in Philadelphia, Podres did something no other coach had bothered to do. He watched, he listened, he worked with Schilling on his mechanics, his grip, his two-seam fastball, and then more importantly on his mind. Schilling said, "I have stated what kind of impact my father had on my life. Johnny Podres runs a close second. He taught me how to pitch. He taught me how to act. He taught me about life." After Podres passed away in January of 2008, Schilling wrote publicly, "Outside of God, my wife, and my father, there was no person who impacted my life more than Johnny Podres. Johnny made me realize that being a man was not about the things we think it is supposed to be, but about compassion, care, commitment, loyalty, integrity, and drive." His wife Joan said it most simply. He was a diamond in the rough from a small town. He wanted to be remembered as proof that someone from a place like that can make it at the highest level. He had done exactly that twice, once with a baseball in his left hand, and once with nothing but patience and the willingness to believe in people that others had given up on. He retired to Queensbury, New York, near the mountains where his father had mined. He fished. He watched harness racing and almost always lost his bets. He was, by all accounts, exactly the same man he had always been. Johnny Podres never made it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. He received votes. He was considered. But the numbers of his regular season career, 148 wins, 3.68 earned run average, were not the kind of numbers that opened those doors. Not when men like Koufax and Drysdale were standing in the same era, occupying the same conversation. But here is what the Hall of Fame does not contain. It does not contain the memory of 34,000 people singing Happy Birthday before a World Series game. It does not contain the sound of Brooklyn erupting in the autumn of 1955 after 7 failures and a lifetime of waiting. Outside the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, there is a statue of Johnny Podres in his follow-through position. It stands exactly 60 feet and 6 inches from a statue of Roy Campanella. Together, they commemorate one game on one afternoon in one October. Not his career. One afternoon when a young man from a mining town decided that the Yankees were not going to beat him. That greatness is not always measured in the obvious places. Sometimes it lives in the pitch a young man throws on his birthday when his city has nothing left to believe in. It lives in the 23 quiet years a man spends coaching in dugouts that history will never photograph. It lives in a single act of belief. One coach looking at one struggling pitcher and saying, without hesitation, that he sees something worth saving. Brooklyn only ever won one World Series. One time in all the years they played baseball in that borough. Johnny Podres is the reason that sentence is true and not zero.